Section 1. Kin. Chapter 1. The sun rose high in the sky, the last of the twin moons dipping low behind the horizon. Elana tugged her arms closer to her chest, the softness of Danae's shirt a warm whisper against her skin. She closed her eyes as the rising sun lit against her cheeks, and a gentle breeze fluttered through the window, tousling wisps of her long, thick, ebony hair. She could hear Danae's gentle breathing from the bed, her Amazon buried in a nest of blankets and pillows. A gentle smile rose to her lips. She could still smell the pine soap mingled with her lover's skin from their bath the night before. She could still feel Danae's arms, hear the gentle beat of her heart beneath her chest. Every sensation had been like sunlight to flowers, bringing Ilona back to life after being separated for far too long. Alana glanced over her shoulder at the roaring fire, leaping and dancing in the hearth. It was a careful balance, keeping the fire stoked high enough to offset the cold from the open window before it could wake Danae. The Amazon couldn't rest when she was chilled. Her blood ran hotter than the people of Aggar. Elana had gotten used to the warmth of their shared room, but sometimes, when her mind was spinning and her sight felt muddled and clouded, she missed the cold. She ran her fingers over the icy stones of the windowsill. She had spent most of her life within the walls of the keep, studying with would-be seers and guides to both hone her blue sight abilities and become a shadow, a bonded guide, for someone worthy of such a formidable companion. She knew every line of the building, every stone and ridge, the cold of the stones. It was such a familiar sensation. The faint ghosts of Amarin, spirit and emotion entwined, and memory buzzed through every crevice of the keep. Generations of study, dreaming, reaching out for the stars and destiny coalesced under her fingertips. She could taste it in her mouth, feel the warmth of the seers and shadows that came before her, nestling around her, forever entwined with her soul. She was woven into a web of the past, present, and future. A blue sight, a shadow of the keep. And today, she would leave Aggar forever. It made sense that she would feel so ill at ease. Her sight made her sensitive to the moods of others, but it made her own emotions difficult to control. It had taken her entire life to learn to set herself aside, to become a true shadow. But even with all her lessons and meditation, exhaustion could still cloud her mind. The back of her neck tingled, and her breath quickened as she felt Danae slowly sit up, her Amarin still heavy with sleep. Between her sight and their shadow bond, Ilana's heart, her breath, every function of her body was synced to her lover. When they weren't close, her body fell into its own rhythm, but sometimes, with Danae near, especially after they'd been separated for so long, her body seemed desperate to bond with her partner. "I didn't mean to wake you," Elana called as Danae glanced at the empty bed in confusion. Danae's bare feet were soft on the stone floors as she slid out of bed and crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. She wrapped her arms around Alana's waist, her forehead resting heavily on the blue sight's shoulder. "I thought you'd sleep longer." Danae's normally low voice was husky with exhaustion. Her grip on Alana's waist was desperate. Ilona could feel a lingering fear darkening her shadowmate's thoughts. She smiled and gently laid her hands over Danae's. "I'm all right. I already feel stronger with you by my side." "You should be sleeping. I've felt how tired you are. You were near death." Elana shook her head slowly and turned to face her lover, laying a gentle kiss on her lips. "I'll sleep enough on your ship. You said the journey takes a quarter of a 10 moon?" "Roughly. We'll be in hypersleep, but the process isn't particularly restful." "Tell me about it." Danae's eyes were steadily growing sharper as she woke, no longer misted with sleep. Elana held her tighter as she felt her shadowmate's Amarin darken with unease. "Is something wrong, Sorowin Natimi? Are you rethinking your decision? Elana shook her head. No, not at all. I told you I wouldn't hide anything from you anymore. I'm just still in recovery, and I'm curious about the journey. Danae let out a nervous breath, still so careful with her young lover. Elana felt the shift in her Amarin as she became suddenly protective, and Elana fixed her with a knowing glare. She didn't need to be handled with care. Danae laughed aloud at Elana's incredulous glare and kissed her. Forgive me, Anna. Elana laughed at Danae's use of her childhood name. Answer my question. We'll be laid to rest in hypersleep chambers. Our bodies will be frozen, stopping even cell growth. We'll be locked in time until we're wakened on Shakina. So, you mean it literally? There will be no rest, as our bodies can't restore themselves while we travel. We'll arrive exactly as we left. Elana suppressed a shudder, carefully guarding her fear. To be so far from life, frozen in a metal ship. Elana kissed Danae once more and shut the window. It would be worth it. A life with her Amazon, her shadowmate, a life of adventure on a new world. All of it was worth the journey. She stretched her arms over her head. Perhaps she should try to sleep again. When is Cleus coming with the shuttle? Danae sat on the bed. At dusk. I assumed you would want time to say your goodbyes. I made my decision. I'm a shadow. No one will expect me to bid them farewell. Danae leaned back on her hands, her brow furrowed. The light of the fire left sharp shadows across her angular face, and the narrow swath of skin exposed by her unlaced sleep shirt. Are you sure? That sounds so cold. Elana smiled. They're very happy for me. Not every shadow finds someone to bond with, and even fewer make such a happy match. They knew I would leave. They hoped I would. Danae shook her head. I've been here for years. I pride myself on my ability to assimilate and respect other cultures. But I still don't understand this. Forgive me if I'm being insensitive. Elana glanced over her shoulder, her blue eyes flashing. You're not. I didn't choose a gentle life. I chose a life that would be mine. But that doesn't mean there's no joy. Danae hesitated. Will you miss it? Elana crept toward her, leaning over her, their eyes meeting as Elana flooded her partner with her certainty. It's a chapter of my life that's come to an end. My future is with you, and I choose it with all my heart. Danae gently caressed her face and guided her down to the bed, her strong hands cupping her cheeks and drawing her into a tender kiss. Elana pressed her hands under Danae's shirt, her skin warm and smooth. Danae grunted as her transmitter emitted 3 low rings. Elana glanced at it on the other side of the room with Danae's pack. Do you need to get that? Danae shook her head and pulled Elana into another kiss. I'm busy. The transmitter started ringing once more, the sound insistent. Elana glanced at it again, and Danae sighed. I'll answer it. Danae climbed out of bed and grabbed the communicator, her eyes flicking across the screen. Her lips pressed into a hard line. It's Cleus. Is everything all right? Elana questioned. Danae nodded. I should return her call. Elana settled back into bed. Talk to her. I'll try to get more sleep. Wake me when you're done. Danae nodded as the transmitter started to ring again. This is Diana and Athena. Danae's voice faded as she stepped out of the room to give Elana peace. Elana leaned back in the bed, and pressed her face against the pillows, savoring the scent of her shadowmate, infused in every stitch. Just a few moments with Danae had brought her back to herself. It had made her aware of her repairing body. She was exhausted. She curled under the blankets and held a pillow that smelled of Danae close to her chest. Within moments, she drifted into the oblivion of a dreamless sleep. Ilona stirred and slowly woke. She felt heavy with sleep and better rested than she expected. Her eyes flew open as she realized how late it was. It was already past nightfall. She sat up with a gasp, looking around with wide eyes. Why had she slept so long? Hadn't the ship arrived? Danae? Ilona couldn't feel her lover near. She slowly slid out of bed and padded on bare feet across the cool stone floors. Danae's bags were gone, as was her transmitter. Ilona felt a flash of fear. Danae wouldn't leave her. She shook her head at her own foolishness. Danae would never leave her again. And after nearly dying from being apart, Ilona would feel if her shadowmate was dangerously far from her side. Ilona pulled on breeches and tall boots. She slipped off out of the room, into the long, narrow hallways of the keep. The click of Ilana's boots rang through the empty passage, bouncing off the gray stone walls. Something felt off. There was a darkness about the keep that had nothing to do with nightfall. She reached out with her sight, trying to interpret the offending sensation, but nothing seemed abnormal. The seers, bound with their hive mind, drifted through non-linear time. The council went about their various tasks as the students finished their chores and began their late-night studies. There wasn't a panic in the air. Ilona was sure if something had happened, either to the keep or to Danae, there would be more chaos. But she couldn't shake the darkness that settled around her. Ilona ran her long, tapered fingers through her thick hair, her curls twining and tugging gently at her hands. The physicality of the motion was centering, pulling her out of her own mind. Perhaps it was a bad dream she couldn't remember. It wouldn't be the first time she'd been unsettled just after a nightmare, and she'd certainly been sleeping deep enough to forget dreaming. Still, she thought she was beyond such foolishness. She hadn't been afraid of imaginary things since she was a child. Alana? Elana turned as she passed a small study, a fire burning in the hearth. A gentle smile rose to her lips. The old mistress of the keep stood from a cushioned chair and smoothed her long black robe. Her hands were gnarled with age, her body frail, but her eyes were still as sharp as her mind. Elana had learned recently that the old woman was her grandmother. It mattered little to two women who had taken the vows of a shadow. Familial sentimentality was a quirk, something to be cast aside or kept as an amusement, but nothing to be loyal to, nothing that should tie them down. Still, knowing their genetic bond, Ilona couldn't stop herself from studying her face a little more closely whenever they met, searching for similarities. The mistress of the keep smiled, instantly interpreting Ilana's gaze. Ilana cleared her mind with a faint blush. "Mistress?" The mistress welcomed her into the room and gestured to a chair. The rope that bound her robe closed swayed, the tawny fibers catching the firelight and seeming to glisten gold. "You're looking better, Ilana. Healthier. How are you feeling?" Ilana took a seat as the mistress poured her a cup of tea. "Much better with Danae returned. But, mistress, I thought the Amazon ship would have arrived by now. Did something go wrong? Is Danae—" The mistress raised her hand. "Fine. She's fine. I believe there was a delay. Your Amazon didn't want to wake you while you rested so well." Ilana shifted uncomfortably. "Something still troubles you?" Ilana leaned back, drawing on the comfort her mentor had always given her. "I think it was a dream." "Another vision?" Ilana shook her head. "No, nothing like that. Just a feeling, like a child who wakes and thinks she sees something moving in the shadows. It will pass." The old mistress considered her words carefully. "You are not my student anymore, Elana. You are bonded and destined to leave this world. But if you'll indulge me?" Elana nodded. "Of course." "You know the strength of your skills. You know you see as well as any adept seer, and if you were not bonded, you would still be our eldest prepared. You inspired the trainees by surviving without your shadowmate for so long. They still whisper in the halls about how you triumphed over the bond. You took their fear." "You know as well as I do that I had less than a day left in me when Danae returned. If she'd been delayed, it would have been too long." "I have my doubts, but that isn't the point. You are powerful, stronger than you realize. You should trust your instincts." Elana shot a sardonic grin. "I'm a bit old to be letting my nightmares guide me. My sight shows nothing out of the ordinary. I'd be lying if I said my senses weren't still recovering from Danae's separation. I'll trust my instincts when I'm sure they're rooted in reality." The mistress bowed her head, raising a single hand in acquiescence. "Again, I don't presume to instruct you. I can only advise." "I'll take your advice to heart." A twinkle of humor lit the old woman's eyes. "No, you won't. But that is your right." They shared a smile. The sound of boots striking the stone floors echoed through the hall, and Alana closed her eyes, drawing a deep, warming breath. Danae. "Elana? You're awake?" Elana turned to the door and reached one hand out to her love. "Mistress told me Cleus was delayed. Thank you for letting me rest." Danae strode forward and took her hand, her eyes warm as she saw the color returning to Alana's cheeks and the strength growing in her grip. She would be back to her full strength in less than a day. "Politics. Senior Terrans scrutinizing our paperwork. I'm afraid there are those among the Empire who enjoy making my life difficult." Elana's brow furrowed in concern. "Will they discover I'm not really a sister? They won't let me leave if they realize I'm of Aggar." Danae held her hand tighter. "You are a sister, and you don't have to worry about the immigration laws. There are sisters hidden throughout the Empire who will make sure our documentation clears. We just have to wait a bit longer. I'll admit I'd rather you be at full strength before we leave anyway. I may delay the journey entirely until I hear back about my request to shorten your assimilation. I don't think our metal moon base will be safe for you after so long in space." Elana nodded. "I trust you, Danae." "You're both welcome here until you leave," the mistress offered. "Thank you, mistress." "Of course, Elana. This is always your home when you have need of it." The old mistress leaned over her hand, a rough cough ripping from her throat. A spot of blood appeared on the back of her hand. Elana leaned forward in concern. "Mistress?" The old mistress waved her off. "It is nothing. Just over the mantel is a box. Medicine." Elana pulled a vial of deep green liquid from the box. "Mix it in my tea. Just a couple drops." Elana did as she was asked. The new brew emitted a foul, pungent odor that curled Elana's lips in disgust and surprise. The old mistress laughed. Elana's expression quirked into a mischievous smile. "I don't have to drink it." The mistress took her tea and emptied the cup in a single gulp. "The privilege of youth." Elana knelt beside her mistress and took her hand. Her grandmother's skin was silken and paper-thin, so fragile for a woman with such inner strength. "What's wrong, mistress?" "A bad cold. A flu." Elana ran a finger over her hand, smudging the spot of blood. "This isn't common." "Elana, my dear, in a keep full of the greatest seers, blue sights, and healers in the world, you think I wouldn't know if there was something more?" Elana squeezed her hand. "I suppose you would." "Now." The mistress's eyes sharpened, her voice losing any sign of illness. There's no reason for you to push yourself today. Night has fallen. I recommend you both get to sleep. Elana shook her head. I've slept all day. I'm not tired anymore. The old mistress touched the dark circles under Elana's eyes. You should know by now. I can tell when you're lying, dear. She glanced around Elana at Danae. And if your pride insists that you stay awake, I'm sure you can find a way to fill your time. Danae blushed and hid a cough behind her hand. Elana stood with a teasing glare, knowing a dismissal when she heard one. You're too perceptive. Proof I'm not terribly ill. Still, call for me if you need me. I'm sure I'll be perfectly fine. Elana joined Danae. Good night, mistress. Good night, Elana. Elana and Danae walked together out of the study, back to their room. Despite her insistence that she had slept enough, Elana caught herself yawning behind her hand. Danae wrapped a steadying arm around her waist and shot her a teasing smile. Your mistress was right? Elana leaned on her shoulder, savoring any closeness with her shadowmate. Even innocent touches seemed to flood her with new strength. You're just as smug as she is. A compliment if I ever heard one. You like her? I do. Elana smiled gently to herself, unexpectedly pleased with the praise. The old mistress had been a mother to Elana in many ways. While the mistress would call her foolish for clinging to such sentimentality, even subconsciously, it warmed her heart that her partner and her family approved of each other. What did you do today? Danae tensed, a gentle blush coming once again to her tanned cheeks. I was communicating with the Empire most of the day, trying to get our paperwork cleared. Elana laughed, reading the truth in her Amaran. You lost your temper? A few times, she admitted. You're so patient with them. You deserve to lose your temper every now and then. Danae kissed the top of her head. It's still not becoming of a diplomat. Elana glanced up at her. You were afraid they'd learn the truth about me, and I wouldn't be allowed to leave with you. Danae shook her head. No matter what happens, Elana, I'll be with you, either here, on Aggar, or at home. Many in De Sororman wouldn't be above smuggling you out. Elana grinned at the thought of subverting the Empire. I love you. They reached their room and dressed for bed. Elana entertained notions of doing something more, but the moment her head hit the pillow, her eyes started to close. How could she be so tired after a day of rest? Danae wrapped Elana in her arms and laid a gentle kiss on her long neck. I'm glad you're finally getting sleep. Elana could only muster a gentle sound of agreement as she nestled deeper into her lover's embrace, surrounding herself with Danae's strength, her scent, and softness as she drifted into dreams. Elana! Elana woke with a start as Danae grabbed her shoulder. Her heart leapt in her chest at her shadowmate's urgency. For a moment she was transported to the mountains further north, traveling with Danae once more into the hazardous lands of the Maltar. Danae released her with a silent apology. I didn't mean to scare you. Elana shook her head. I'm fine. What's wrong? Danae hesitated, and Elana's breath caught in her throat. It's the old mistress. Elana leapt from the bed and ran out into the hall. Her nightdress whipped around her legs as she moved, her heart pounding in her chest. Danae kept stride with her. She's still alive. She slipped into unconsciousness in the night. Her cough? This can't be normal. The healers are running tests. Elana burst into her mistress's room, startling two healers standing over her bed. The wizened old head healer of the keep stepped forward. Elana, you can't be in here. Elana took a step forward, her eyes wide. The old mistress was pale. She seemed impossibly frail in her sleep, her breathing labored. Miriam! Miriam shook her head and guided Elana out. Her grip was weak, but Elana didn't fight her. Elana, I know this is hard, but we don't know what's wrong with her. If it's contagious, you could be in danger. I don't care about me, Elana argued.
Then care for her. Her immune system has weakened. If you have even a breath of a disease in you, your presence could make her worse."
Ilana grasped her own hands behind her back, holding them in tight fists to keep them from trembling. "She just had a cough. She was taking medicine. You don't know what's wrong anymore?" Miriam's lips folded into a frown.
"She didn't have a cough, but we were treating her illness. We thought we knew what was wrong, but her previous diagnosis wouldn't account for this. We're doing the best we can for her."
Ilana's stomach turned and soured. The darkness she'd felt the day before returned. She shook her head. "Something else is wrong. She's not just sick." Miriam let out a gentle breath of surprise.
"You've had a vision?"
"No, but I can feel it." Miriam took Ilana's shoulders.
"You've been under a lot of pressure lately. You're just recovering from your own brush with death. We'll take care of the mistress."
Ilana shrugged out of her grip. "This isn't anxiety. There's darkness surrounding the keep. Something is off."
"Wouldn't the seers sense something like that?"
Ilana frowned. "Seers can be deceived."
"You should rest. We'll send for you when the mistress wakes."
Ilana grit her teeth, carefully burying her rising frustration. There was no use talking to her anymore. "Thank you." She stormed away. Her gaze flicked to Danae's mouth, getting her attention without meeting her eyes as she passed. She didn't need her lover to feel her rage. Danae followed her back to their room. "Are you all right?" Ilana leaned back against the wall, her arms crossed and her nails digging into her skin. "Something's wrong. They won't listen to me." "She made a good point. Could your fear be—" "I'm not wrong." Danae leaned back in surprise at the acid in Ilana's voice. Ilana instantly softened her tone. Danae didn't deserve her anger. "I'm sorry." "I've never seen you so riled." Ilana rolled her shoulders, trying to ease her own tension. "She's important to me. My family. I want to help her." "Is there anyone you can talk to? Anyone who will listen?" Ilana considered potential allies. "Yes, but without the seers sensing danger, they'll be wary. I'm powerful, but I can't see the future." "What do you feel?" Ilana closed her eyes, opening her sight and her heart to the energies around her. "Darkness. Ill intent. It seems to be everywhere, dusting every bit of the keep." "Like a plot? Do you think someone is trying to hurt the mistress?" Ilana grunted in frustration. "I can't feel anything in particular. It's not like I feel the presence of an assassin or a saboteur. Just something wrong. Something that isn't natural." "What could be blocking the seers from feeling what you are?" Ilana's shoulders sank. "I have no idea. But if the Maltar proved anything, it's that the seers aren't infallible." "Should we wait a while? Maybe the healers will be able to discover what's wrong with her." Ilana turned, staring at the ground as her mind spun. "I don't know what else we can do. I just don't like doing nothing. I don't like feeling helpless." Danae wrapped Ilana in her arms. Ilana closed her eyes, breathing in Danae's scent and relaxing in her warmth. She felt a flash of Danae's memory, a night spent alone in the forest, fearing for Ilana when she'd been imprisoned by the Maltar. "I know how you feel." Ilana returned her embrace. "I know." "What will make you feel better? Do you need sleep?" Ilana shook her head. "I'd rather work. With the mistress ill, training will be disrupted. I used to teach fighting and riding." Danae tensed. "Are you sure?" Ilana glanced up at her Amazon and smiled. "I'm not so fragile." Danae shook her head. "I never meant to imply." Ilana silenced her with a gentle kiss. "I'll be careful. I just want to run. I want to be useful." Danae nodded. Then you should. Whatever makes you happy.
Help me?
Is that allowed? I'm not a shadow. I don't want to impose or offend anyone.
The students are fascinated with you, a real sister of Yamaya, an Amazon. They could learn much from you.
Danae smiled. All right then, we'll teach together. They headed toward the practice courts, still holding hands. Elana tried to draw comfort from her lover, but she couldn't push aside her fear. There was more coming. Complications. Pain. Hardship. She could feel it. But if it saved her mistress, her keep, she was willing to meet it.